This video is made conceivable by InterestStream and CloudWatch, another full-length buddy video, to this one in my continuous present-day struggle series that makes sense of the whole course of the clash of Aleppo during the Syrian nationwide conflict, which you can access by pursuing the InterestStream Cloud Group bargain for under $15 every year at curiositystream.com. Genuine legend, you've presumably seen a guide of the world before. That seems to be this, a guide of the world's 195 generally perceived nations. These guides show the erratic lines made by people throughout the long term that partition us. They show the limits of countries and the areas of urban communities, and throughout recent many years, this guide has seldom changed. The last time that it officially did so was over 10 years prior in July of 2011, when South Sudan was brought into the world as the world's latest country. Each political guide of the world created in the long time since that date has generally stayed static and unaltered, and thus on the off chance that these are the main sorts of guides that you've at any point been seeing, you would have neglected to see the genuine, gigantic, and remarkable pace of changes that have been occurring all over the globe throughout recent years. And to see that change all the more plainly, you must switch to an alternate guide showing our planet around evening time. This is the Dark Marble, a delightful guide made by specialists at NASA utilizing huge number of discrete composite pictures that have all been consolidated into a solitary opening taken from a satellite explicitly intended to detect the world for man-made lights. Nothing educates us seriously regarding the spread of humankind across the planet than the examples made by the sparkling lights of our urban communities, and assuming that you know where the perfect locations are to look. This guide can basically let you know, all in a solitary picture, the whole history and story of humankind. We should start by taking a gander at the genuine shapes and examples of where individuals inside nations reside, like here in Afghanistan. On a political guide, Afghanistan has an exceptionally remarkable and complex-looking shape. However, saw on the guide of lights around evening time, the valid and more straightforward example of where Afghanistan's kin reside is uncovered. Truly, Afghanistan's 32 million individuals live generally in a colossal ring with a solitary roundabout throughway interfacing a large portion of the nation's significant urban communities and populace focuses all together. This is generally in light of the fact that in the focal point of this ring are probably the tallest mountains found any place on Earth, with a portion of the pinnacles ascending to as high as 24,000 feet above ocean level. The inside is simply excessively unforgiving of a climate for huge scope urban communities to be based on, and consequently, the ring around them is where most Afghans really call home. Unusually, the most practically identical example of civilization to Afghanistan's ring of individuals can be found across the world over the Atlantic on Iceland. Like Afghanistan, the focal point of Iceland is brimming with good countries and brutal cold, tough landscape that isn't great for establishing enormous scope settlements. In the meantime, the island's coast has hotter temperatures and gives simpler admittance to fishing and exchange. Thus, subsequently, Iceland's 366,000 individuals live to a great extent in a ring around the island's inside, along the coast, and about portion of them live in the brilliant shining spot of the capital city, Reykjavik. We should now investigate another captivating populous design by traversing the world again toward the South American mainland and centering here over focal Argentina. During the daytime, you'd scarcely see any indications of human settlements here whatsoever, and could try and think that you're taking a gander at an unwanted region of the planet. However, flip the change tonight, and the story looks totally different. For sure, now you'll see endlessly columns of almost impeccably dispersed specks of light that sell out the presence of unequivocally arranged and coordinated human settlements. These dabs are each a town, and they show up generally every 30 to 50 kilometers from one another in light of the fact that they're completely found across rail lines, and they all grew up as rail line stations. On the off chance that you contrast the guide of the area around evening time with this guide of the Argentinian railroad network from the very start of the 20th 100 years. Let's explore how satellite images reveal fascinating patterns of human settlement and development around the world. In Russia, the Trans-Siberian Railway, the longest rail line globally, connects Moscow to Vladivostok, spanning over 9,000 kilometers. This rail line has been instrumental in Russia's development, linking many towns across Eurasia. In contrast, Australia's vast outback desert is sparsely populated, with most settlements concentrated on the east coast. The city of Perth stands out as the most isolated, significant city globally, with the nearest city, Adelaide, over 2,100 kilometers away. A small spot of light in the Australian outback is Alice Springs, home to 26,000 people. Nearby is Pine Gap, a joint U.S.-Australian intelligence base that controls American spy satellites. Its remote location makes it an ideal spot for signals intelligence gathering. In the United States, a distinct population pattern emerges, with the East Coast being densely populated and the West Coast having scattered settlements. The 100th meridian line of longitude roughly separates the two regions, marking the beginning of the American western frontier. This line still largely holds today, with few large settlements west of it. Satellite images taken at night reveal fascinating patterns of human settlement and development. The Trans-Siberian Railway, for example, connects Moscow to Vladivostok, spanning over 9,000 kilometers and illuminating many Russian towns. In contrast, Australia's outback desert is sparsely populated, with most settlements concentrated on the east coast. The city of Perth stands out as the most isolated, significant city globally. The Indian subcontinent has undergone significant changes in recent years. In 2016, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi pledged to bring electricity to every village in India. By 2016, over 125 million Indians had gained access to electricity for the first time. China's population pattern is also fascinating. The country has undergone rapid urbanization, with over 170 cities having populations of over 500,000. The Pearl River Delta is the brightest region, with a population of around 70 million people. The Korean Peninsula is a striking example of contrast. South Korea is brightly lit, while North Korea is largely dark, with only 48.5% of the population having access to electricity. The Middle East has undergone significant changes due to conflict. Yemen, Iraq, and Syria have all experienced devastating wars, resulting in widespread destruction and loss of life. The city of Aleppo in Syria is a particularly tragic example, with over 80% of its lights going out between 2012 and 2016. Due to the brutal conflict. These satellite images offer a unique perspective on human development and conflict, highlighting the stark contrasts between different regions and countries.